didn't have my microphone on. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Let's Pod This Live. We are broadcasting live this evening because why not?
Because we can.
It's been that kind of week.
Because we're here, because it's 8 o'clock, and I don't know. There's no Game of Thrones tonight, so maybe people will people will call in.
That's true. That's true. So it's nice to hear from everybody. We are, when we got this new setup, Scott, we thought about doing live shows more often.
We did, and then we thought that 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon might not be.
Sometimes that doesn't work out for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And we record it various days of the week, various times of the day, and so sometimes it doesn't always work out as one would hope.
Maybe one day the two of us will do the podcast full time, and we can do it at the same time every week.
Wouldn't that be nice?
It'd be predictable.
That would be a show, or we would just record a whole bunch in advance.
If you guys want to make that happen, you can, you can sponsor a show.
You can always sponsor a show. That's exactly right. All right, I'm still trying to get all my screens pulled up. If you are watching live by chance on Facebook or on Vimeo, you can comment and let us know if you have any questions, any thoughts, and we are going to kind of respond to those. If you would like to dial in, we could take calls, Scott.
We can take calls. We can take tweets. We can take Facebook comments, right?
I know we have one person that said they might call in.
Yes.
Call in.
And I think there's at least one or two other people that are going to watch. I'm curious if anybody who's watching, if there's any other Game of Thrones fans out there, I would just like to hear any thoughts you might have on this week's episode.
Was it the finale?
No, this coming week is the finale. Apparently there's a petition going around that like 300,000 people have signed saying they want to see the final season redone.
People are so bananas. I have not watched a single minute of Game of Thrones.
You should. It'll make your life better.
That's what everyone says. I just haven't. I've had other things going on, so I just haven't got around to it.
You got to make the time, man. Got to have priorities.
I do. My priorities are different.
They're not watching a fantasy show that's characterized by dragons and bloodshed and lots of softcore porn.
No. I've been watching The West Wing through a second time. I'm on season 5 now.
It's only a second time through?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I've seen a few episodes more than once, but overall it's my second time through. And then there's a Dead to Me is a new show with Christina Applegate.
Okay.
And both my wife and I are interested in watching that. We just haven't had a chance. Also, you're aware of our puppy situation. Our puppy will be 1 year old next month. And then we have another dog that's smaller, but she'll be 3 next month as well. And they haven't got along for the last few months. I think our listeners may have heard that. But Walter Bagpipes, Walter Boozehound Bagpipes.
Walter McBagpipes.
He tried to drink my beer earlier today. Also, we call him Bagpipes because he looks like he's just like, bagpipes when they're just laying there is like a sack with a bunch of reeds sticking out.
Yes.
And that's him with his legs. Yes. He's starting to fill out some, so he's less bagpipe-like.
Juno tried to steal some fish from me earlier.
Really?
Yeah, I was making...
What kind of fish?
Mahi-mahi.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Feeling...
It's from Trader Joe's, man.
Nice.
It's what the recipe called for. But I had thought it, I had cooked it, and I put 2 cooked pieces on the plate, and I was getting some rice. Had some little mahi-mahi and some coconut rice for dinner. And I'm getting the rice, and she wasn't even in the kitchen, but I hear just a little sound, and I roll around.
Just a quiet dog.
Yeah, she was in the kitchen, on her hind legs, up on the counter, reaching for it. Oh, I was pissed.
Would she have eaten the rice, and is she into vegetables or anything?
She'll eat anything we give her that's food for the most part.
Right. So because Walter has now stolen an entire head of broccoli, several Brussels sprouts, and raw Brussels sprouts, an entire avocado, an entire potato, like a baked potato. I pulled it out of the oven and he snatched it while it's still hot and with.
So she would eat those things, I would say. But I will say she does not prefer the vegetables. She actively tries to steal protein, particularly fish. Fish is by far her favorite.
Okay, well,
I assume that's the northern dog in her.
Right. That makes sense.
Like she can be asleep in the living room and like I'll cut open like a package of salmon to cook,
and she hears
and she's like just immediately in there with her ears perked up, like this is my jam.
Right. That's like our cat. If you open a can of anything, he thinks it's tuna. So,
well, who doesn't love a good can of tuna?
This is true.
So it's been 6 minutes, and we're
talking about dogs and food,
which is great. I mean, we can keep going. No one's told us to stop.
Well, that's because no one's watching. And when they listen to this tomorrow, they're going to be like, what's wrong with you people? So let's get into the news then. Where's I rearranged my buttons and I'm all screwed up now. All right.
We need to get you a third screen.
I need just a whole rack of iPads here. Binders full of iPads, which is it's a throwback to.
That's a deep dive, man.
It's
a deep dive.
It's a Romneyism.
Yes,
but not about iPads.
For people who watch national politics way too closely.
Right. That's a decade ago. Right? Wasn't that 08?
No, it's 12. 08 was McCain.
Right. But
08 was I can see Russia from my house.
Right.
That
right.
was
Right.
08.
But
Binders full of women was not, I thought it was 12.
I think so too. But Romney ran in 08. He just didn't get the nomination.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember watching him.
Yeah.
Early in the spring.
Yeah.
His hair does not move. It reminds me of Jimmy Johnson, the coach of the Dallas Cowboys, former coach, who like was kind of famous that his hair like never moved and lots of hairspray. And I feel like Romney's the same. I just want to
I've never heard Mitt Romney and Jimmy Johnson.
Well, no, very different men.
Compared to, I've also never seen Mitt Romney in a shirt that isn't starched.
No, well, he looks a little bit like a televangelist.
Well, it looks a lot like a televangelist. He looks a lot like a televangelist.
Like Robert Tilton.
Before we get too far, have you seen the preview for this new HBO show?
I don't know.
So
it's
got
watch TV.
So it's got John Goodman. It's got
I'm in it already.
It's got the douche from Pitch Perfect, the lead singer of
I thought you meant the douche from Parks and Rec.
No,
the douche.
Oh, no. The douche from Pitch Perfect, the guy that's the lead singer of the boy a cappella group in Pitch Perfect.
I've not seen Pitch Perfect.
So it's him and then one other guy, and the three of them. I haven't looked into the show, but if I'm understanding the previews correctly, the three of them play televangelists that are like openly, shamelessly taking advantage of their followers. Like they each fly on their own private jet. They're called the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost are the names of their planes.
Good.
And they have these rolled chains, and it looks pretty hilarious.
That's like that guy on the Kardashians called himself the Lord.
Right. You should also shows Schitt's Creek. Have you watched Schitt's Creek?
No, but it's on my list.
Oh,
yeah.
you got to watch Schitt's Creek.
Right. Do we have to bleep that? It's got a C in it.
Yeah, the C is it's there. You can hear it. Do you need to do your newscast again?
The news button?
Because you did it. We just kept going. There it is.
You just want to hear the sound effect. So we're going to just do a few news stories. The big news of this week, of course, is the budget. So we'll get to that in a second. However, we do have a special segment in just a moment. All right, so
it was clamored for on social media today.
Right. So Scott, this story was, was this last weekend? This is a Washington Post article, but it's about Oklahoma, and I started reading it, and I legitimately teared up the first time, and so I kind of pushed pause because I was trying to play with my kids at the same time, and you can't read sad news about healthcare and enjoy family time very well.
It's tough.
And so, as the physician in the room, because there's only two of us, why don't you tell us about this story, which is entitled "Who's Going to Take Care of These People?"
Yeah, so like you said, this is a piece from the Washington Post. It's we can't go through the whole thing. We spend the whole hour on it. It's a long form piece, but it focuses on Fairfax Hospital, and it's another version of the story that we've been hearing for months and years now, which is their rural hospitals.
Months and years.
Yeah, I mean, but truly though, right? Rural hospitals all around the country are closing their doors. This is in Fairfax, which is in northwest Oklahoma, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And the story starts with
it's up between Ponca City and Tulsa. I think.
So northeast Oklahoma.
Yes.
So the story starts with the CEO is calling a meeting of her staff. Basically, half the staff of the hospital have already quit. Their computer software has been shut off because they can't pay their subscription fee anymore.
Ugh.
They have $12,000 in the bank, which for even a 15-bed hospital is maybe a few hours of operating expenses.
Whoa.
Sorry. And they're trying to figure out what they're going to do, right? They're trying to figure out how they keep this hospital open to serve their community. The community is only about 1,300 people, but this is for those 1,300 people and surrounding smaller communities. This is the only acute emergency medical care that's available for 30 miles, right? Which if you're having a medical emergency, 30 miles is a long freaking time, right?
Yeah.
Like 30 miles at 60 miles an hour is half an hour away.
Right.
And
So if you've got an urgent need, like, you are screwed, right?
Right. So for a point of reference, like for someone who's having a heart attack, right? It's like for someone who's having a heart attack and they need a stent, right? Like they need a stent placed in one of the arteries that goes to their heart.
Mm-hmm.
The standard care, like you need to get it done like as fast as possible. What you shoot for is like a door to needle time of 90 minutes, right? So from the minute they like walk into the hospital, you want them to be getting this heart cath done like within 90 minutes, right?
Right. That seems like reasonable. If I was having a heart attack,
Yeah.
time is of the essence.
Yeah, and sooner is better, right? Like oftentimes you go
Yes.
oftentimes you go in faster than that. And I haven't worked in acute care in like 4 years now, so maybe that's even faster now. But can you imagine if like before that 90 minutes you spent 30 minutes having a heart attack trying to find a hospital, right?
Just driving around,
right? Or like maybe even a better even better example is stroke. So I had a professor in medical school who was a stroke specialist, and he like hammered it in, like for a patient having a stroke, like time is brain, right? Like
because
like the brain,
you're
like
losing
brain tissue is dying, and when it dies it doesn't come back, right? So imagine somebody who's having a stroke and it takes 30 minutes to try and get the medical care. So I think honestly we can leave it there. I think that sets up the article nicely.
Yeah, it's a long form piece, but it's very good and also very sad. But I think it really like highlights the
kind of crystallizes it.
Yeah, I mean the reality of what's going on, right? And like, I mean, I think it's easy for us here in Oklahoma City or in Tulsa to like think about. I mean, we've got from where we sit right now, we have 2 hospitals that are less than 5 minutes away, right?
Yeah.
And then another 3 that are within
15 minutes.
Right. And so, and they're all well equipped, right? One of them is a level 1 trauma center and all these things. And so, I think that is a very different story than rural areas. And 10, 11 years ago, I used to live in a semi-rural town in Texas, Brenham, home of Bluebell ice cream, the Bluebonnet capital of Texas, also the baseball capital of Texas. It was a cool place. Anyway, it's a town of about 25,000 people, and there's a little community hospital there. And that hospital had been the place where almost everyone in town had been born. Often many of their parents were born there. In some cases, like their grandparents have been born there. If anything happened, any kind of farm accident, slip, fall, whatever, like that was the place. Otherwise, you had to go to Austin or Houston, both of which are about 90 minutes away. And I thought about that of like, oh man, like let's say I'm in a car accident on Highway 290 near Brenham. If this hospital is not here, I'm dead.
Yeah.
Like that's really what it boils down to.
Well, there's the like moral like need for people to have access to medical care. Like that's one argument. But the other side of not the other side of the coin, the next kind of thing to think about though is what's the economic impact of this, right? Like in a lot of these small towns, there's 2 big buildings, right? One's the hospital and the other one's the school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like and
right.
that's
right.
And when those things shut down, that's a huge blow to like the community's, kind of their center, like the place that they go, the thing that kind of organizes them. But it's also an economic catastrophe, right? Like for these hospitals to shut down, that's at least dozens, if not hundreds of jobs that are gone. Tough to find employment where there's not a lot of, startups moving into rural Oklahoma. So there's a huge economic issue there too. And when those people lose their job, they lose their health insurance, and now they have no place to go. So it like has, it's like there's like a multiplying factor in terms of the way it exacerbates the access to healthcare. So all that to say, check out this article. If you're not a subscriber to the Washington Post, good news, you get 5 free articles a month. This one is absolutely worth one of your 5. Make this one of your 5.
I'm not saying it's a good idea, but if you switch your phone over to what's the hidden thing where it doesn't track cookies? The private browsing?
You can get more than your 5 free articles.
Right.
You can also subscribe to the Washington Post and support local journalism, not local, support good journalism. They're not local, but
Those aren't exclusive though.
yeah, Washington Post subscription is $99 a year. So
Really?
yeah,
I don't subscribe, but I
It's,
needed a 6th article this month. I knew I'd just gone over my 5.
yeah, it's $99 a year. So that's what is that like $8 a month or something, right?
Something.
So
About like Netflix. Yeah.
um,
It's like Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are 16 minutes in and just rambling.
it's cheaper than Amazon Prime now.
Rambling.
Next up, this is in your bailiwick.
Oh, it is.
This is News OK.
My wheelhouse.
This is one of I texted Andy earlier today that I'm up to here with the ledge. I'm at my
For those of you listening at home, he's gesturing towards his forehead.
yes. I'm at my peak frustration level with the legislature for no particular reason.
Your
it's
hair
just-
is looking extra voluminous this evening as well. Did you take a shower?
no.
No, just stressful day. Just got a little fluffy.
I drove with the windows down.
Ah, there it is. Nice.
One of my favorite things to do.
Do you feel weird with the windows down driving, listening to a podcast as opposed to music?
No, but I'm also like fairly shameless.
That's fair. I always get a little self-conscious, I'll be honest, especially at drive-thrus. Like I went through the drive-thru at McDonald's yesterday for breakfast because I love to hate their breakfast burritos. They're never as good as I think they're going to be, but I keep eating them. And whenever I get there, I like hit pause. I'm like, "Hi." I just feel like it's weird if someone like looks out and you're in the middle of something. I'm listening to,
I mean, if I'm going through like the
538.
drive-thru, if I'm going to the drive-thru at Starbucks, like yes, I'll pause it.
what if
So-
you're listening to our podcast?
So can I confess?
Yes.
I haven't listened to our show
Me either.
in like at least 6 months.
No, we used to, right?
Yeah,
I think when we were starting out, we felt
Yeah.
compelled to,
yeah.
but also we edited it and there was a little, I would put little surprises in there, I think, but now we can usually like get it on one shot.
Yeah. So all that to say, no, I don't.
All right. Well, listeners, if you listen to us in the drive-thru, please just turn it up and then tell the person at the window about us.
There you go. There you go.
And then
I should-
rate and subscribe on Apple
I
Podcasts.
should
as well.
listen, and the guy in the drive-thru is like, "Dude, is that you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, bro."
No,
me.
that's funny because I was listening to a podcast yesterday. What was it? It might have been one of the Weeds podcast from Vox or something.
So good.
One of the ones you sent me, and I was listening to that, and my kids were like, "Dad, is this you?" I'm like, no, and they're like, and then my daughter said, "I don't think this is you." I was like, "No, it's not. I told you it's not." But I think they remember previously having,
Yeah.
like when I was like kind of testing it out. So
If I could be on 538 of the Weeds, I feel like that's like bucket list, but that's neither here nor there. All right, so
oh no, it was West Wing Weekly. That's what I was listening to.
another
I
solid
am
choice.
not Rishi or Josh. So
So,
anyway, so the bill.
19 minutes in, our second news article from News OK. Bill, what's the bill number here, Andy?
1810.
House Bill 1810. This is a bill to...
Nope. 1018.
House Bill 1018. This is a bill to update HIV/AIDS education. This is a bill that's been in the works for 3 years-ish.
Yeah.
Bipartisan
Yeah.
sponsors. It's a Republican bill. It was run by Republicans. It got through committee, passed both chambers, I think, overwhelmingly, right? Was there any opposition?
Yes, a little opposition, but it still passed overwhelmingly.
Overwhelmingly. Went to the governor's desk this week, and what happened?
Veto. Where's my? There we go. Yeah, it was. So I will say, a huge hats off to all the folks that worked on this bill. I won't even go through to name them all. We had some really great colleagues that were working on this on behalf of the Oklahoma AIDS Care Fund, for which I am the president of the board currently. Man, we were disappointed. So yeah, we've been working this for 3 years. I know that we've talked about it here on the podcast some, right, Scott? And so it would have updated the language of the state education mandate, which has not been updated since 1987, which is also the year that the very first HIV medication came out. However, in the governor's veto letter, like, so if you apparently something I learned this week, if you have a bill and the governor vetoes, they tell you why, which is nice, right? Like, it's appreciated to at least,
I guess,
find out why they broke up with you, right? And so in his veto letter, it said he didn't feel like this needed a statute. And I mean, obviously it already is a statute. It already is a law. We were just updating the law. But what he said is that the State Department of Education and the State Department of Health should go ahead and update the curriculum. And I found
they should.
they should.
Have they done that in 30 years, Andy?
No, and so that's the interesting part. And in fact, if you read the article, like we said, we'll put it on our blog. There's a quote from Representative Marcus McIntyre, who was our House author of this bill. Adam Pugh carried it in the Senate. McIntyre says, he was also very surprised. We had every indication the governor was going to sign it up until, he didn't. But in the past, my understanding, again, is that historically, the State Department of Health has not updated the education mandate because they said they couldn't because of the statute. And so what I think, this is just Andy's interpretation of how things are going. I think what has happened is that perhaps the State Department of Health has viewed the mandate as the maximum allowed when actually it is worded to be the minimum required. Right, so what the law says, you have to do at least this, but you could do more. And the State Department of Education has interpreted that as saying we can't do more than this. And so because of that, they haven't. So I think in a way, Governor Stitt's declination to sign was him saying, hey, like Department of Ed, you should do this. And maybe like you can do this and you need to. I don't think he can actually like mandate the Department of Ed to do anything. He can, the Department of Health. And both of those entities signed on to our bill and were very supportive. And so I'm optimistic that they will say, like, they might even be relieved, right? And be able to say like, oh, great. Okay, well, we can do it now. We just didn't know we could. And I think Superintendent Hoffmeister is supportive. I don't want to speak for her.
He could mandate that. I mean, he appoints the majority of the state board of education.
So that's a weird deal. Yeah, but the superintendent is not appointed or hired. She is elected by the people.
Right.
And so historically, I believe the superintendent has at times been at odds with the governor because basically the superintendent can say you're not the boss of me because the governor is not.
Yeah.
Which I can imagine would be incredibly frustrating to our present governor.
I mean, it's almost like it would have been simpler if he just signed the bill.
Well, yeah. I mean, that was the idea. That's why we had the bill.
I mean, he's a known like legal scholar and policy expert, so he probably thought this was better.
Governor Stitt.
Yeah.
I sense the sarcasm there. But I think despite that, I do think that he may have done us a solid in this. And if this is one tiny thing that I'm trying to read the tea leaves, right? But like, let's say he keeps doing things like this, where he kind of empowers certain state agencies to do their job when they feel like they can't. And having worked for state government, I know that many people feel like they can't do things because they have been like, it's like a learned helplessness over time, right?
Right. I guess my pushback would be if he is trying to empower them and say, no, you really can. You're allowed to do this. That's fine. If that assumes that the impetus has been that they don't think that they're allowed to. Right.
Right.
It is different if they know that they're allowed to and they haven't because they think that they'll face backlash or they think, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
Have they been waiting for the legislature to say, no, you have to do it this way? So then they do it and they're like, we don't have a choice to talk. We have to talk to your kids about the HIV because they said that we have to, right? It's not like they're taking the initiative to do it on their own. Right?
No, but I am
It's not a group of unelected bureaucrats deciding what we have to teach our kids.
Right.
Well, what I told him was I had to have.
That was too far. I will say I am optimistic, and I know I can see on Facebook right now. Shout out to Sarah, who is one of our former therapists at our HIV clinic.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, thanks. You did a great job. We have an opening for a therapist now. If you want to come back, it'd be a great time.
You're using the pod to recruit. Violate our nonprofit status?
No.
Okay.
It's for another nonprofit. Okay. It's all okay. Let's move on.
It's 25 minutes and we have so much to talk about. All right. This next really short. Governor Stitt, one of his first things that he did one of the first things he did when he assumed office was said, we have a state airplane. We don't need that damn thing. It's a waste of time. It costs $1 million a year to operate it. We don't need it. We're going to sell it. It'll fetch at least $2 or $3 million in open market, and we're going to get rid of it. It sold today for $1.2 million. There it is. All right.
I was ready that time.
There it is. We need to coordinate better.
So he said he thought it would sell for $2 to $3 million. It sold for 1.2.
I mean, and that's maybe
He's
a totally reasonable estimate. I mean, the guy's he's a private pilot. He owns his own plane, so
Oh, that's right.
he knows way more about the market for airplanes than either one of us do.
Does the
so,
article say who bought it?
does not?
What if he bought the plane?
That'd be awesome. I would support that.
Is that? It's not illegal.
I am not a pilot and can't afford a plane, but if I could, a King Air would be like on my list.
King
They're like
Air.
freaking phenomenal.
Are they? Have you been on one?
I haven't been on one. I've seen one up close. I've not gotten to fly on it.
If any of our listeners have access to a King Air, a 1990 Beech B300 King Air specifically, I've never been on a small airplane. I would love to go.
So the King Air, interestingly, this is related. So the King Air is actually a plane that's used by United States Special Forces operations for reconnaissance over like enemy territory.
Really?
Yeah, and it's actually there's a unit that's doing this now based out of Tinker. So they take that little plane, they strip out the insides and fill it with very sophisticated and classified intelligence gathering equipment, and it flies at I think quite low altitudes over places that are not very nice, and listens to things. And
it seems like it could be like
takes
pretty
pictures. Yeah,
right, like
they're
pretty
cool planes.
nimble.
Yeah, they're cool
How
planes.
do you know this stuff?
I waste a lot of time on the internet.
Yeah, fair point. All right. Well, yeah. So you can look. There's a picture of the plane here if you'd like to look at it.
Yeah.
Also, by the way, if you go look at the article about the HIV bill that failed, there's a picture of me.
There's also one thing I think that, and this is entirely speculative on my part,
Excellent.
but I think that this particular plane, it's called like the Spirit of Oklahoma, right? I think that this plane was based in Norman, and I think was used. I shouldn't say it may not be this one. So the University of Oklahoma in Norman has one of the best flight schools in the country, and they have a twin engine turboprop King Air, just like this one.
Yeah.
That they use to teach their students turbine transfer, which is like multi-engine planes and like how you like use power like between the two of them, and that's like the extent of my knowledge about it. If this was that plane and they don't have it now, that's I think a significant loss for the aviation school in Norman that trains a lot of.
I can't imagine they would have used the
pilots.
governor's plane for that.
Well, they don't fly it very often.
Right.
I'm sorry, I keep coughing.
We should call a doctor.
No, don't.
If only we knew one.
They're too expensive.
See our first article. All right. So the last one is about that. This is a follow-up to an episode we had, I don't know, 2 months ago, where we interviewed Attorney General Mike Hunter. That the judge in Norman has ruled that the opioid trial can continue.
Yes.
Do you know anything else? Is that the extent of it?
So Johnson & Johnson and Janssen had said that basically,
Those are different companies.
yeah, Johnson, they had said that the suit should not be allowed to go through because the statute that they were using, this public nuisance, they were like, this is not what it was designed for. This is usually like overgrown hedges, like neighbors, like property and such. The state argued that no, that is appropriate because the state is seeking damages for abatement, not compensation, right? So the state is not asking for $1 billion so that they can hand out checks to everybody who's been a victim of the opioid crisis. The state is asking for billions of dollars because they want to use that money to try and fix the problem. Right? Does that make sense? And so they said that was... this is the appropriate statute to use. The judge agreed, and the trial is set to go forward as scheduled.
Well, excellent. I know that Jackie Fortier with State Impact Oklahoma has been working diligently on some stories regarding the opioid trial. Also, can I just say, I didn't realize that the Sackler family, who's associated with, they own Purdue Pharma, right? So that's the settlement we had. I didn't realize that they are so rich.
Into everything.
They have a wing at the Louvre.
Yeah.
Or the Met. The Met.
I think both, actually.
I know they've donated a significant amount to both and the Guggenheim and stuff. But to have, so I have a friend who is like friends with someone that is related to that family, or like went to school with one of the Sacklers or something, and like they're like, oh, we can't go, we have to go to our dad's birthday, and they're like, well, he's like turning 80, and so we got him, we added on to our family wing at the Met, and I'm like, holy God, like that's there's me down here, right, somewhere around my knee, and then there's Rich, which is like at my shoulders, right, and then there's Sackler family Rich, which is like somewhere around Mount Kilimanjaro. Like it's like way up there.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Well, on that note, speaking of people who wish they had money.
That was amazing.
Like that transition.
That was the best transition ever. Well, if you are a longtime fan of the show, you know what that music means. It's time for our favorite segment, Pruitt Watch. I have to say, some news came out about Scott Pruitt today, and there was a veritable uprising on social media asking for a new Pruitt Watch segment. So
give the people what they want, Scott.
If you ask, we are here to deliver. So this is from KFOR by way of our friends over at the Washington Post. So there has been a new study out regarding Administrator Pruitt, and in a development that no one could.
Former Administrator Pruitt.
Former Administrator Pruitt. And in a development that literally no one could have seen coming, the 84-page report says that roughly $124,000, $123,942 of Mr. Pruitt's transportation expenses were inappropriate. That's in a 10-month period, folks. So over the course of a year, they were spending $12,000 a month on transportation in what the Inspector General of the EPA
was above and beyond what they should spend, right? So they actually spent $985,000, so almost $1 million on 40 trips, 6 of which were canceled. So that's the other part of the article is that it says the 6 canceled trips cost the government $106,000. Scott, can I tell you for just for 1 year in my life, I would love to make $106,000. What would it be? I know you're a physician, but you're not that kind of. You're not like a radiologist, an interventional radiologist that makes ungodly amounts of money. But I just would like. Both my wife and I work for nonprofits, and we did not choose the most lucrative or whatever.
I think you can probably do a lot with $106,000.
I think you could, especially for trips that were canceled. Didn't ever happen.
Yeah.
Not to mention the $124,000 that he spent. Just to fly in the fancy seats.
Yeah.
I'm flying to Canada next month. We're in the cheap seats.
I've only flown in the fancy seats a couple of times. God bless Miles, man.
So I'm considering wearing like my tux just to see if I can get an upgrade. Like, hello, yes, I'm flying to Whistler. Is there anything are there any seats available with the plebeian?
I'm just gonna let you know though that like. Tux is not formal wear in Whistler.
Really?
No.
You gotta wear like tails?
No, in Whistler, formal wear is like really nice hiking boots.
Oh right,
and
like North Face everything.
Yeah. No, not North Face, like Patagonia or.
What's the difference?
Or actually,
what about Target brand? Is Champion acceptable? That's more my style.
No, it would be Arctic. What is it? It's one of the.
We're going in June.
Arc'teryx. Arc'teryx is like.
Never even heard of that.
So Arc'teryx is this brand that they make really. They have really really cool stuff.
Should I stop the Pruitt Watch music?
Yeah,
here?
probably. But like
so we move on to apparel.
But you go to the Arc'teryx store in Whistler, and I was like, oh, I think I might want to like an Arc'teryx like rainproof like jacket. I feel like that'd be cool. And it was $225 on sale.
Oh.
And I was like, nope, not today.
Not today, Satan.
Not today.
My wife and I are considering buying some hiking boots. I may go for trail runners. I'll be honest. That's what I'm leaning towards.
Yeah, solid. There's a lot of. You're gonna love it, man. It's a great town. It's a great place to relax.
I'm gonna set my happy ass in a hot tub and not leave for a week.
It is one of the best places ever.
All right.
But check out that on KFOR if you want to know about the most recent development that's totally unsurprising about Scott Pruitt wasting our money.
That's right. All right. Well, if you are watching at home on Facebook or on Vimeo, please.
If you've hung with us for this far.
It still says 4 people have joined. I don't know if they've since unjoined, but
Wait, more people are coming?
no. Well,
Look at that.
it's Shelly and Jenny who volunteered at our prom. We didn't talk about prom. It was great.
It was a lot of fun.
Hats off to Jenny and Shelly for helping handle like check-in and registration.
Yes.
That was a huge blessing, and it was a success. We raised some money for Let's Fix This. Everyone had a good time.
Were you hungover the next day?
I plead the fifth. I didn't. I stayed the night there. It was great. I may have had a headache and eaten a burrito the next day. And so, well, if you're watching online on either of those and you want to comment with questions, I have them pulled up. I can read those questions, presumably. And what we're going to do next is we're going to jump into the budget here. This is our budget music for this year.
I like it.
I've got some other music for the outro, but next year we'll find some other
We had a long debate about what
appropriate budget music.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
So if you have questions, please feel free to put those into the chat pod. And in about 10 minutes, we'll open it up for phone calls as well, in case you want to call in. I have a mic set up even here. It's right. You probably can't. It's this Chrome thing here. We can have a caller. We've never had a caller on the show like this. We've had prearranged calls.
Hi, Andy. This is Don, longtime listener, first time caller.
This is Ben from Dover.
Just had a quick question. I'll be sure to take my answer off the air, if you don't mind.
Oh man! All right, so let's talk about the budget. So
We have a budget.
we have a budget. On Tuesday, right? There was dueling pressers, which we haven't had for a couple of years. It was a little exciting.
It's
There
true.
was some tension for a minute.
Well, there were some dueling pressers last week. So the Senate came out.
Yeah, those were lame.
Well,
though.
so the Senate came out last week and was like, "We've got a compromise with the House and the governor's office," and they laid it all out. And then the House and the governor's office were like,
we're not that into you,
no."
right?
And
What we
so
didn't have is the governor with like a big notepad and
Yeah.
just drawing a 0 on there. You remember that?
yeah,
from
I do.
2017?
I heard from a little birdie actually that after the Senate's press conference, the governor was a little peeved and wanted to respond right then, but received some advice that maybe wait until Monday.
Man,
Wait,
smart. Yeah,
wait until Monday. Let's keep talking over the weekend. This is politics, and kind of see what we come up with.
That's
so
wise, sage advice.
yeah. So Monday came and went, and then Tuesday we had the announcement that
No, well, Tuesday we had the pressers
Yes.
so first the House, so Speaker McCall and Governor Stitt were like, "Hey, we got a deal here. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do this and this and this." And so they went through their whole thing, and then a little while later, the Senate was like, "That close, but
you're just right there."
what the Senate thinks we should do is," and so Senator Treat, he and I disagree on some policy issues, but I would argue that he's a statesman and he understands how that body should work, right? And I mean, again, this is still a big change from how it was last year, the last several years, where it was the House versus the Senate versus the governor was a tertiary thought, right? And so to have House and governor up there and being like, "Hey, we got a deal. This is great," and the Senate was like, like 80%.
Do we?
Right, but like what we really want is a little extra money for education, and so we were like, "Oh, there's drama," and then the next day
We got a deal.
they're like, we all love each other, and this is what we want. But it seems like at first blush that it's just what the speaker and the governor said, right?
Yeah. So that was my initial question. Was like looking at this budget, like so the governor said, the House said, we all had to come together, we all had to compromise, and then reading the budget, it was like, I don't see where the governor compromised exactly. It seems like he got exactly what he wanted. The short version of this budget, many agencies are going to be held flat, right? No increase, no decrease. The main agencies that are getting an increase is the Department of Education. There's going to be roughly like 100 and I want to say like 60-ish million in education. So there's some money there for a teacher pay raise.
Well, it's like the 70 something million for the pay raise plus
another 74.3 into Common Ed, plus another 5 or something into. There's like a couple other like small things, but the big things are that the teacher pay raise is happening. There is additional money into the formula. The compromise seems to be where the Senate wanted. So the Senate wanted to put $200 million into the Common Ed and into the formula, and like basically every district use it how they want to. The governor wanted to guarantee $1,200 pay raise to every teacher in the state. The compromise is that if I'm understanding it correctly, that for districts that are on the formula, they have to give a $1,200 pay raise to their teachers. Districts that are off the formula can use the extra money like however they want to. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Right.
So like,
so
not every single teacher is going to get the pay raise, but like 93% or like, I think it's even higher than that. Like 97% of Oklahoma teachers are going to get a $1,200 pay raise.
And those who don't will be pissed about it.
There is a pay raise in there for state employees. It's like $1,500 for those making under 30, $1,200 for those making 30 to 40. I think like 800 for 40 to 60 and 600 for those over 60,000. Mm-hmm. And then there is a $2 per hour increase for correctional officers, which is like what, 15%, I think. There raises correctional officer pay by $2 an hour. I think probably the biggest victory for the governor is that there is $200 million going into the rainy day fund on top of the $400 million that is, or 440 that is statutorily required to go into the rainy day fund. So that was something he's pushed for, something he ran on, something he wanted, that he's made clear since day one. My understanding is, again, from talking to some folks that spend more time at the Capitol than I do, the governor had made pretty clear that he would not sign a budget that didn't put $200 million into rainy day fund. Yeah. Like he was prepared to veto a budget that didn't do that.
So, so a question. Did they, because it's all just running together at this point, right? Like, did they ever establish a secondary savings account in addition to the rainy day fund?
No, they did
not. Not last year either?
No.
Man, because there were so many bills last year. There was one that Senator Holt and
it was a state question, right? It went to a state question.
Oh, right.
And it
didn't go past, right? And we didn't get that this year. So far, my favorite named fund is the Governor's Quick Action Closing Fund.
Well, and so that actually brings up there were some fireworks. So we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. So they announced this budget deal yesterday. The broad contours of it. The actual bill language came out today. I'm told at 2:56 for JCAB to start at 3. Which is
I think it was earlier than that because I was just looking at a thread on Twitter from Cindy Munson from 10 hours ago where she got a copy of the full budget. And that was 10 hours ago and it's almost 9:00. So I don't know. It's like
there was
noon.
There was a thread from another legislature that said it was.
She's got a photo.
It was later. I believe you. I saw that same tweet. I'm
just saying.
But
it was today.
It was today. Shortly before JCAB. And yeah, so there's going to be $20 million for the governor's quick action closing fund. So this is a fund that the governor can use at his or her discretion. Like, let's say that they're trying to entice a business to come to Oklahoma, right? And we're going to try and offer like some tax incentives, but they need a little cash. The governor has the discretion to use this to like close the deal, right? To like sweeten the pot for a company to come, start in Oklahoma or move to Oklahoma or create jobs in Oklahoma. So that's. And I want to say the governor I don't think he'd asked for 20 initially. He'd asked for like 5 or 10, like not a big number, but there's 20 going to the Quick Action Closing Fund.
Right.
And that came up in JCAB today because one of the things that this budget does not do is restore the refundability of the EITC.
Right, which is the Democrats' big.
Well, and the thing is, it's the Democrats' big complaint, but it is also a policy priority acknowledged by many Republicans. Like, there are lots of Republicans that are like, yeah, restoring the refundability of the EITC, like that is a thing that we should do, right?
But
like
it didn't come up, and so
the EITC was started by Reagan, right? Like this is not some
Really?
yeah, like this is not some like liberal, like this is a Republican idea that's been around for 30 years. And what was it, like 3 years ago, they took away the refundability of the EITC, which is devastating to working families. Working families, right?
Working.
It would cost $30 million to restore refundability,
which is a lot of money, but not proportionally to the
$8.1 billion that we're appropriating, right?
Billion.
And so it was asked, like the question was asked during JCAP today, like, did you guys even talk about this? And Chairman Wallace said no, like it didn't come up.
I saw that.
Like,
he was like,
no, we didn't even talk about it. And like, so you're giving the governor $20 million to like play with, to like bring businesses here,
right?
But we can't do $30 million for like working families, right? Like, and so that was a big complaint of Democrats that I think is legitimate. The other thing that I think is a legitimate complaint, you know, there's been some musings about like, well, that the Democrats weren't even at the table, they didn't even have a voice in this. I mean, that's politics, right? Like the Republicans have a supermajority, they're going to pass this budget, and they don't need Democratic votes to do it. And I love the Dems. I think they're a great group. We give them a hard time sometimes here on the show, but like,
but you're a Democrat.
I'm a Democrat. You know, I'm friends with several of them, and they do a lot of good things. But I think it's fair to say that if the Democrats had a 76-24 majority, I don't feel like they would have an equal number of Republicans at the table when they were putting the budget together, right?
No,
like,
that's the thing,
that's
right?
like,
like politics takes front and center on this kind of stuff. And so, I mean, I'm going to finish your point. I've got a secondary point that relates to that.
Yeah, but my point is what I think what is a legitimate gripe, though, is that particularly for a governor who ran on transparency and accountability, like, I understand negotiating the budget behind closed doors. Like, you cannot negotiate these things in public and in front of the press, right? You just for a million reasons.
Have dueling pressers all the time,
right? Like that's not practical. It doesn't work. But I do think that there is some legitimacy to saying, like, whether it's 4 minutes or 4 hours, I think it is reasonable for people that are voting on an $8 billion budget appropriation to have more than 4 minutes or 4 hours to read it, right? Like a day, like 2 days. And the reason that they're doing it today is because they had to pass it through JCAP today, so it can come up on the floor tomorrow. Right. So they can get a second reading on Saturday, so it can pass on Monday.
Right.
So that it can
go home before Memorial Day.
Right. Like it's all in the interest of like they just want to go home. And like I get that, but like I mean, do you see what I'm saying? Like I think it is reasonable for members of either party, but particularly in this case the minority caucus, to think we should have more than a couple hours to like look at this.
Right. All right, I'm gonna let you finish, but
I was done.
Oh yeah, I'll let you finish. Good. So now I have 3 points. The first point is, if I'm totally with you that it feels right or fair for the minority party to have time to review the budget and debate against it. However, you and I both know the outcome would not be any different.
100%.
It would just give them time to like better formulate their argument and not be debating it off the cuff. Would it be any better? I don't know. Like, especially this year where we're not cutting any state agency, right? Like, no one's getting cut. Most folks are getting a tiny bump or a significant bump, and so
or being held flat. I think actually most agencies are being held flat.
Yeah. Which is just as a reminder, every state agency has been cut an average of 40% over the last decade, right? That is nearly half. So 10 years ago, our state agencies had twice as much money as they do now. And so when
this is in inflation adjusted dollars.
Right. And so if you are frustrated with how the state runs now, bear in mind they've got half as much money as they did 10 years ago, and they're trying to do the same amount of more work than they did because there's more people, right? So anyway, that is irritating to me as someone who interacts with the government all the time, and there's just not enough going on. Good golly, my phone is falling.
It keeps making noise.
It is. So that's my first point: is that it's still big cuts, right? However, I don't think that it would be any different if they had a day. It would be more ethically preferable, right? Or like morally correct or something, for them to have more time to review it. That seems like the right thing to do. I hate that I don't know that the outcome would actually be any different. So that's
I think the outcome would be no different, right?
right.
Like the outcome would be exactly the same. But like I think the Democrats are going to vote party line against this, and the Republicans are going to vote party line for it.
Right, which is difficult because it puts the Democrats like voting against a teacher pay raise, right? Like politically, it is a dicey vote.
Sure. But I also, though, just like my point is not that giving the minority party more time to review it, like, changes anything.
No, it's
right.
It's just like the ethical right thing.
It's
to
not.
do.
It's not even the ethical right thing to do. It is that the thing that kind of grinds me about it is that
It's really grinds my gears.
you know what really grinds my gears.
This really gets my goat. Chaps my hide.
I feel like the governor ran on being a different kind of politician.
Oh, okay. So that's point number 2.
Okay.
It's about transparency. That you keep using that word. I'm not sure it means what you think it means. And so I had this discussion, as you know, as some of our listeners know, one of my other hats is to be the director of Freedom of Information Oklahoma, right? So it's a nonprofit that advocates and promotes transparency in government, perhaps even adherence to the law, like as it pertains to open meetings, Open Records Act. Oh, which reminds me, as we sit here, the Board of Regents for OU is meeting, presumably, and could have appointed a new president. I haven't looked at Twitter in the last hour. So
On it.
Yeah, you check that while I keep talking. So yes, you're exactly right, Scott, that Governor Stitt ran on a platform that involved the word transparency. And I would love to sit down with the governor and talk about what transparency means to him, right? Because I am not sure that it means the same. We have the same idea, which is fine, but I think we need to kind of agree on what that looks like. And so I think, so with FOI Oklahoma, we had a conversation. I had a conversation with some folks yesterday about the idea of like, we should do some like town hall meetings around the state, or like an Oklahoma watch, like a watch out, one of the things they've done about guns and marijuana and mental health and everything. Let's do one about transparency and talk about what that really means and the value of transparency. Everyone likes the idea of it, but there is a tangible value to you and I as citizens, as people who live here, of knowing how our tax money is spent, where it goes, why it's the decision process there, not so we can like bitch about it, but so that we know, because it is our money. We own the building. We pay their salaries. We have a right to know.
Agree. And I would add to that like one of the other reasons that to me it's such a, like, it's so, like, to me what part of transparency means and why it's such a bad deal to have the budget come out 4 minutes, 4 hours, or honestly even 24 hours before they're going to hold a vote on it, right, is because we know, and again, this is not a knock on the legislature, this is not any fault of their own, many of these people are not experts. They may be experts on like the budget process, right? They may be experts on the legislating now, particularly if they're sitting on JCAB and they're in leadership in these discussions, but they may not be experts on like agriculture policy and like what that means for people in the Oklahoma Panhandle, right? And so what needs to happen, or I think what should happen, is the budget should be out long enough for people who are experts in it, right? Like advocacy organizations, to go through it and find mistakes. Right? Because that happens all the time. Like you'll have like some, you'll have the organization for, brown cows, right? They'll read through the budget, right? And they'll get to like the funding for the agency that deals with brown cows. And it may say that the funding is $100 and it's supposed to be $10,000 or $100,000, but somebody put the decimal point in the wrong place.
Right.
But then when that gets done, like when that's signed, like that's the law and that's the amount of money that they get.
Right.
They should call a freaking special session to fix it, right?
Right. When you rush, you make mistakes.
Right. And so like one of the things that this would that allows for is for people to go through the budget, and again, not just to bitch about it, although people are going to do that, but they're going to do that anyway.
Right.
For people to go through and say, hey, Senator so-and-so, hey, Senator Thompson, hey, Chairman Wallace, like you funded this thing.
Macarena.
Right. Like you funded this line of the budget at $100,000. It was $1 million last year. Like, did you mean to do that? And they might say, "Oh shit, no! Like that wasn't that wasn't
my bad."
Right. And so, like, like when you rush, you make mistakes. And part of what transparency does is it allows you to find those things, right? And again, I'm not arguing that transparency means that you're having these negotiations like out in public. Like that's people like, well, this shouldn't happen behind closed doors. It should absolutely happen behind closed doors because that's the only way that it's going to happen.
Well, yeah. I mean, I will say I and many others believe that the legislature should be subject to open records and open meetings, right?
I think that's fine depending on how you structure it.
Right. I mean, I don't want to expose like constituents' personal information. Nobody wants that. But like,
right, like you and I text with legislators all the time. I don't feel like those texts should be part of open records.
I do.
When we text with legislators, ask them to come on the show?
Yes. Well, yes. No. Because why not? What's the harm? Okay. Ooh, Scott Melson texted Jason Dunnington asking if he wants to come on the show. That doesn't matter.
I'm not saying that matters, but like, no, I don't think they should.
How funny. We have not had this discussion. Part of it is that I live my life, like all of my work emails and stuff, I think are subject to open records because I work for a somewhat state-funded entity, right? Like, and so I tell my staff all the time, like, I'm pretty sure this is the case, but also like, don't be dumb.
Okay, but so do you also do you believe in this is a little bit of a stretch, but I'll make I think that there are parallels. Do you believe in like executive privilege for the president?
To some degree.
Right. Well, I think the same thing applies, right? Like,
I think saying there should be certain exemptions that are cut out, but like
right. Like, I think that legislators, like anybody else, have to go through a decision making process, and I don't know that the entirety of that decision making process needs to be open to the public. People ask rhetorical questions. People use extreme examples.
So make the phone call instead of sending a text message. Like, just don't be dumb.
Right. But like, I don't have a problem with the legislature being subject to open records. I'm just saying that like, I think you need to put limits on it, right?
Right.
Like,
well, and here's the deal. So like,
right, is every text message that you send to a legislator in the context of their job as a legislator?
So that's a fair question.
Because I would say it's not. And for me, it's not. Right.
No, but again, like when you request records from any government entity, there is a review of those records, right? Like they are kind of checking them to make sure that they fit the bill for what the request is. I think that's relevant. Also, it is exceedingly rare that people just issue or submit blanket requests for like all text messages.
So you trust some government bureaucrat to go through all your emails and text messages and decide what should be released and what shouldn't?
Yes, I do. Because if it was me, I would hold that job in high esteem, and I'd be like, I am the keeper of this. This is important, right? This is the same as I hold like our records clerk in our medical clinic to be the one to review like what is relevant when she releases records for those purposes. Like, freaking like trust. I get that why we would not trust some people in this world, but like, don't hire them also. And I think
fair.
And I think that if, because I've seen it modeled in countless cities and states, that how they can do it in a really fair and open way. And I tell you what, when states lean in and they do try to do this, then they're not actively hiding things and people trust them more a tiny bit. And
I think that's
promotes a better union.
I think that's fine. And I would agree with
another thing.
I would agree with the general proposition,
right,
that more transparency is better.
Well,
but I guess I would also say that as a general proposition, there are certain, like, you can't negotiate a deal to something that's really, really hard.
No, but
with 100 voices at the table.
No, but
and that's what happens when you try to do it in public, right?
Right. Like, but that's what I'm saying is that like budgets, right, are not and should not be negotiated via text message.
Well,
go have a face-to-face conference. Like, if you want to shoot a little number, fine. It's all going to be public anyway. It's the freaking state budget, right? But like,
well, I think they do have face-to-face conversations, but I think that sometimes those face-to-face conversations happen behind doors that are closed.
That's fine,
and that's okay.
Yes,
and those meetings, the text of those meetings, don't necessarily need to be subject to open records.
No, to like any the Board of Regents will likely go into an executive session this evening.
Floor debate, fine. Emails, fine.
Yes.
Committee proceedings, fine.
Right. And my issue is that all of that it's currently not, right? Like one of the chambers.
Well, fix that.
I'm working on it. I mean, one of the chambers archives their video on YouTube. The other chamber does not. That seems wrong, right? Like, sometimes I just want to go back and watch some video of someone debating and hold them accountable. You seem like something's important going on there.
No, Juno is trying to steal more fish, apparently.
Ah.
No, I think you're right. And again, I'm not trying to make the case against open records. I'm just trying to say, I mean, I guess part of this is like, not a debate, but like, do we live in a democracy or do we live in a democratic republic, right? And like,
Ooh.
We live in a democratic republic, right?
Shots fired.
And but the way that our government is set up is people think like, oh, my legislator should vote this way because that's what
I said.
7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 constituents in the district think. No, that is a legitimate system of government,
right.
And that's fine. But that's not the one that we have.
No.
Right? The one that we have is we are supposed to trust these people to use their benefit of their knowledge, their experience, and their perspectives to make the best decisions on our behalf that they can.
Right.
And I think that sometimes to do that, they need to be able to deliberate with their colleagues without the specter of those deliberations becoming public.
All right, that's fair. My third point is not about open records. My third point is about a subset of this discussion, right? So when they were debating the budget today, and I guess we should wrap it up because it's been over an hour now.
It's been 1 minute.
There was a bit of a point of contention, a heated debate concerning the April 1st deadline for funding education. And so I happened to be listening to the debate about this. I was happy that I tuned in right then, right when people were kind of like arguing about this. So, Scott, as you know, and our listeners may know, current state law is that the legislature is supposed to pass an education budget by April 1st. And that law has been in the books for like 20 years. It has happened twice.
I think it's been 20 years, but it's been a minute.
Yeah. Okay. So it's happened twice, right? Once was last year.
Fun piece of trivia. You may be going here. Who passed that law? Who was a proponent of that?
I'll give you a hint.
I believe he was a state representative, or was he a senator?
I don't know.
I remember when Mr. Pruitt was in the legislature, he was a big proponent of making this April 1st deadline to have the education budget passed.
Which provided some humor today because Representative Forrest Bennett, who's a Democrat from Oklahoma City, said,
"Well, it's because the Dems were asking, because the whole point of this was like they were trying to repeal this April 1st deadline, saying it serves no purpose, we don't want it." And the Dems were arguing like in favor of like why we need to keep it, and the Republicans said, no, this chapped me a little bit, like because the Republicans were like, no, this didn't actually serve a purpose. This is here because when the Dems were in power, the Republicans passed it so they could yell at the Dems about it.
Which is true.
It's true, but now that it's flipped, the Republicans are like, yeah, and so now we're just gonna get rid of that.
Right. Anyway, the point is, Scott Pruitt was the one that was involved in passing it, and so Representative Bennett said, "I stand with Pruitt," which garnered some laughter from everyone in the room, and
well done, Forrest.
Also me. Yeah, well done, Representative Bennett. Bennett with the good hair. So, I will say I totally agree that this was a political tool. I will argue it is admirable. It does not serve the purpose that it was even purported to serve in the first place. And I will say, Scott, that whether we have it or don't, doesn't matter. This is the thing that people argue about for the sake of arguing.
I think that's fair.
Because they want to be on the record as saying, I fought for this. I fought for your budget. That's my Bill Clinton.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
It's not great.
Not.
I did not.
It depends on what the meaning of is.
Right.
Did you finish that Carville interview?
Yes, that was really good.
If you guys are looking for, not that you should listen to any podcast besides ours, but if you have a spare 59 minutes, go to the Axe Files, which is David Axelrod's podcast, the Axe Files, and listen to his interview with James Carville, the Raging Cajun. It is absolutely fascinating and really interesting to hear him talk about President Clinton and what he was like.
I listened. Oh, Bo Broadwater just joined. Bo, we wondered if you would join this evening.
Hey,
Hello,
Bo.
sir.
Thanks, man.
We so last week I think we opened with a cold open of you doing your Carville impression, and I forgot about that. Mine was terrible. I didn't even try. It was just I was phoning it in. So
Was mine any good?
I thought it was good. I've not received any feedback from listeners, but if our listeners would like to respond,
Yeah, let me know if my Carville's good.
you can tweet at Scott at SC Melson.
Thanks, dude.
Or just at Let's Fix This Okay, or you can email us at podcast@letsfixthisok.org, which goes to both of us.
Are we calling it? It sounds like we're calling it.
I think we're nearing the end here.
Oh, last thing I have to say.
Please.
All appearances looked at Siny Die will be next Friday.
Yes.
Do you know what next Friday is?
21st.
No.
I don't know then. I'm just guessing.
24th.
Okay. Is that what you said?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well done. I meant to look on our...
I believe you said today.
What's the day?
The 17th.
I might have, or the 16th. Yeah. That's because I thought they would get along and not have that little tiff earlier this week.
Do you know OK Ledge?
I just barely. I mean, they're all new this year, so it's hard to know. All right, hey, as we roll out of here, one announcement. That is our next event will be on June 15th. We're going to have an event called Civic Saturday. This is an event we're hosting we're co-hosting, at the Paramount Theater in Film Row. And it's an event we're co-hosting with Generation Citizen, with the mayor's office, Mayor Holt, here in Oklahoma City, and a nationwide organization called Citizen University. Your mic's off if you want to talk there.
Just responding to a listener question. Somebody asked us to repeat. That podcast is called The Axe Files with David Axelrod.
I'll just type it in here. Yes.
Civics Day.
Civics Day. Thank you for interrupting me. So Civics Day, go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/letsfixthisok. It's already on there. I've got to add it to our website as well. It's a free event. It's basically a church service, but about civics rather than religion. And so it'll be an hour and a half long from 10:30 to noon on June 15th. Should be really exciting. We hope to make this a regular thing and we can keep doing it. We'll have music, we'll have poetry, we'll have a, quote, civic sermon. It should be really rad. You going to be there? Your mic's off. Scott's nodding. I will be there. Along with my kids. It's a family-friendly event. We'd love to have you out there. So, as a reminder, please don't forget to rate and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Tell your friends about Let's Pod This. Coming up this summer, we're going to switch over to a different format, do some more educational material, and really enjoy the summer. Have a great week, everybody.